All right, everyone, while Paul's walking up, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this week's coffee candidates. The candidates for the legislative 33 districts, Josh Fredrick, Paul Hamelink, Dan Lonowski, and Michelle Smith. We would like to welcome the candidates and all of you for attending today's event. Our event today is sponsored by Troy Davis Roast Coffee, so if you haven't gotten any coffee, it is there in the back and it's delicious. We appreciate having the opportunity for the elected seats and are happy to bring these opportunities to meet the candidates. The Chamber of Commerce, the Hastings Economic Development Corporation, the Government Affairs, and the staff have prepared several questions for the candidates. Following the prepared questions, we hope that everyone will stay and network with the candidates afterwards. To help this event run smoothly and to get our questions answered, we do have a few ground rules. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. If you do need to take a phone call, please step outside to do that. We also ask the attendants that they refrain from any discussion while the moderator or the candidates are speaking. We want to be productive with our time today. I would like to introduce our moderator, Chris Shukai.
Thank you, Mickey, and welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Good morning to you. As mentioned, a series of questions have been prepared. We will rotate the order of who gets to answer first with each question. Jamie is going to be very important for you because she has the time, and she will give you a warning when we get close to 2 minutes with a yellow card, and then the red card will go up. I'll try to let you finish your thought, but then I will interrupt you if you go much past the red card showing on that. So 2 minutes to answer questions. Yellow means 15 seconds. Red means time is up. And with that, I will get started. And Joshua, we will start with you with this question. Please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what previous community involvement you have had.
So red means I'm on. Awesome. Hey, I'm Joshua Fredrick, running for District 33. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I served during the COVID pandemic, was unlawfully terminated over a dispute with my religious beliefs. I don't accept medication made with aborted fetal lines and tissues. As we all know, the COVID shot was enforced and mandated in the services and has since been repealed. So I fought there. They threatened to imprison me. They threatened to take my rank, take my pay. These were all in violation of First Amendment freedoms and something that really shouldn't happen again. So looking forward to getting in the legislature to not return to lockdowns, mandates, mask mandates, or any medication forced on you by your employer, whatever the case. You know, a lot of healthcare workers, government employees, they were coerced into something they really didn't want to do. So I'm a contractor and architectural designer for Master Builder. I've done a lot of community housing, churches, clinics, a lot of design work. I'm 27 years old. I have done some mission work in the past, but community involvement, we're rocking and rolling otherwise than with my wife building a little small community out near Prosser.
Thank you very much. Paul, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us your previous community involvement.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here this morning. Thanks to the Hastings Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation for hosting this. Glad to be here. Longtime chamber member. I've been over 10 years, or about 10 years ago, I was board chair for the chamber. And experience matters. This is something when you go to the legislature. There were 1,415 bills introduced this last biennium. They have a broad range of topics. And that seems like a lot, but somebody in District 33 had an interest and a stake in every single one of them. And being able to speak to them effectively and with the experience and background necessary to handle the major issues like doing a budget. And having sat at this table for a lot of years, I told Mickey this morning I'm at the wrong chair. Mine was the second from my right down there. First on the Planning Commission for years, then on Hastings City Council and as City Council President, wading through those municipal budgets as a senior living administrator for the largest senior community in the state of Nebraska, 385 employees. Understand the cares of seniors and the issues that they face with limited incomes as a licensed nursing home administrator and assisted living administrator, the healthcare issues, the things like the Medicaid reimbursement rate that the state will have to undertake. Taxes are an important issue, and having been a part of limiting government spending and finding ways to work to keep our taxes affordable here in the state of Nebraska, housing is a critical issue, and economic development is an important piece of that. And so I've been involved with now for in my third term and the Commission for Housing and Homelessness for the state of Nebraska, working with the Department of Economic Development and chairing the Policies and Issues Committee. So these are issues that I'm not hoping to do. I'm not trying to find out about. I've been there, done that. I'm continuing to do it now, and will continue to do it in the legislature. We have to address issues like affordable child care and make sure that we retain our workers and recruit more.
Thank you very much, Paul. Dan, you're up next. Please introduce yourself and tell us your previous community involvement.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thanks for getting here through the fog. My name is Dan Lonowski. I was a teacher for 35 years, the last 29 at Adams Central, where I was a wrestling coach and an assistant football coach. I have raised my 5 children here in Hastings. We've got a few other teachers in the group. I was in the National Guard for 36 years. I'm a member of Right to Life in Nebraska. I'm also a member of Knights of Columbus. I've served on several YMCA committees that included soccer, baseball, softball. In the past, of course, my children were there, so I took a direct interest in that. I also was on the Blue Hill School Board, as I lived in that district for a while. And I was on the Blue Hill School Board. And we managed to get a project passed and built a new gym without raising taxes. So that's one of my platforms, is to keep our taxes down and to get some tax reform. In the National Guard, we also ran Guard for a Day. So that was a community project where we brought in citizens, ran firing ranges, allowed people to ride on our tanks, shoot our weapons, fire rounds downrange. And that was very important just to keep the military going. Within the military, I've been to 20 different countries. I've worked with governments in Kandahar, Afghanistan, a little bit in Kuwait, South Korea, and Puerto Rico, where I was a translator for their government and for our government, and just served in several places like that. So I really appreciate you allowing me to speak here today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us your previous community involvement.
Yeah, I'm Michelle Smith. I'm running for state legislature because District 33 deserves a common sense, local voice working to strengthen our communities. I was born and raised here in Hastings. I raised my son here. He graduated from St. Cecilia in 2022, and I've been a business owner here for almost 10 years. August will be that 10-year mark. So some of you in this room actually knew me since I was born. I see some very familiar faces. Some of you may remember when my dad was on the city council and I was the little 3-year-old running around the room and sitting there watching what was going on. So I grew up in politics. I grew up with all of you in the community. I grew up with my dad running for mayor. Also, I grew up in Hastings Catholic schools. I was involved in pretty much everything. I have a scrapbook at home of all the awards I won and all of the things that I was involved in, from singing, music, to academics and sports. I played softball during the summer. I played other sports during the school year. And I also sang as a child. Then when I went to college, I went to Central Community College. I went to Hastings College. I was part of Phi Theta Kappa. I was the vice president of Psi Chi. And then I went on after college. I continued my education to get 2 master's degrees. I have a master's degree in counseling and I have a master's degree in clinical psychology with an emphasis in neuropsychology. I trained at the Lanning Center. I worked at the YRTC in Geneva. I'm also contracted with Maryland Living Center. I was contracted with Hastings Public Schools. I'm involved with Encourage and SASA. I serve on the Mental Health Board. I was an adjunct professor, and I would be honored to be your voice in the state legislature.
Thank you, Michelle. Paul, we're going to start with you for this next question. If elected, to best represent the district's concerns and interests while on the floor of the legislature, what would you do to ensure you are regularly communicating with District 33 residents?
I think the biggest issue is to be involved. I yesterday was at the ribbon cutting for a new affordable housing project here in Hastings, a great project downtown. And there you get to meet people who are directly involved in that industry and involved in those kinds of projects. It's not enough to wait for people to call or email. And while on city council, I tell you, I answered every call, I answered every email and met with every person who wanted to meet. Now, the volume that you get as a legislature doesn't necessarily allow that kind of personal response to every single inquiry, but it's not enough to wait for that. You have to go out and do it. And so that's where I have been engaged not only with organizations like the Chamber and HEDC, but involve myself in getting out into the community so I can hear the voices. You learn quickly as an elected official that often the voices that are the loudest are the voices of the minority, because the majority doesn't feel it needs to express those things as strongly. And so I faced a lot of important issues while sitting here at this council table, and made it a point to get out into the community to talk to community leaders. And so I have a number of key figures who are leaders in various aspects of our community that I communicate with regularly and have been throughout this campaign, making sure that I understand, been discussing bills with them, talking about actions the legislature has gone through. And so it's not only important to hear from everybody in the constituency, but also from those who represent groups in the constituency. And so staying in touch with business organizations, the housing organizations, the industry, and making sure that we're in touch with agriculture, those kinds of things are critically important to us as we represent important issues for those sectors as well as individuals. There's a lot of complicated things that come down the pike. Often it's all informing people as much as hearing from them to help them understand the issues.
Thank you, Paul. Dan, what would you do to ensure you are regularly communicating with District 33 residents?
Communication, short messages, and succinct. When we were preparing for Afghanistan, I was on the general's command staff, and we were attacked at Fort Hood by a disgruntled soldier. He was not happy, brought his weapon on base. I was trapped, I was taking cover and concealment in one building and a general was in another. We talked on the phone and he said, "I'm sending all media requests to you." He said, "Keep your message short and succinct. When a newspaper, when a television station calls you," he said, "give them a short, quick message. Make sure they understand that our unit is safe. Make sure they understand that we're under cover and concealment, and move on from there." So I would have a weekly column. One of the senatorial aides has been calling me weekly, asking me to take him on, and I've told him we can't put the cart before the horse. But we've already talked a little bit about how we would message things on a weekly basis to try and keep our constituents informed.
Thank you very much. Michelle, what would you do to regularly communicate with District 33 residents?
Listening and working together are the number one things I plan to do to represent the people of District 33. We need to work together to find common sense solutions to the issues facing all of us. A lot of that involves things that I'm already doing. On a daily basis as a therapist, I listen to the people in my district. I understand the hard things that the people are going through, things people don't even necessarily realize are going on in our cities and our communities, and I'm there on the ground working with those individuals. Unfortunately, I've even had homeless individuals come to my office and ask to use my restrooms. When I go to take my trash out, there are homeless individuals in our community living in the alley behind my office. Those are the issues facing us. The mental health services and needs are facing us. Substance abuse is facing us. So I plan to listen to the people and understand what they're doing and work together to solve those very complicated issues. Some of the other things I'm doing is going door to door. Some of you in this room, I may have visited your door, and I'm listening to every single person who I come in contact with. And I'm willing to work together. I'm responding to messages, I'm responding to emails. I am meeting with community leaders. I already have networks in place, lifelong networks in place with the professionals in our communities and the leaders of our communities. And I am dedicated and committed to continue building those networks and meeting with our common, hardworking people to represent the people of District 33.
Thank you very much. And Joshua, what would you do to ensure regular communication with District 33 residents?
Yeah, it's a continuation of what's already going on. I'm the most accessible on just about every media platform. The outpouring and comments and reception from specifically young people. You know, we have to get representation that includes the entirety of the state, and that includes, you know, margin of voting is 18 all the way up until death. So, yeah, the communication has been very prevalent. Way to continue this, obviously, is having staffing that can accept while, you know, busy in the legislature. But getting out there and talking with people, you find what their actual concerns are. Number one concern is the greatest evil that's facing our country, which is abortion. It's child murder. We had a terrible defeat in the legislature where the heartbeat bill failed, and we have a 12-week abortion ban. This is a terrible compromise. It bloodies the water with the lives of the unborn. I'd like to see a total abortion ban, and this is very obvious when you talk to people in Nebraska, specifically this area. This is an entire state problem. We want to handle this issue, get rid of this evil. The next thing that's on their list, the next priority, is property tax. These are the two top reasons I'm running. We have to eliminate property tax. It's an immoral form of taxation. It keeps us in perpetual renting to the state where we otherwise don't own our property. It's a continuation of, yeah, how can we continue to milk the people that we retain revenue from? So I'd like to see that form change. The EPIC option is a solid change. I'd like to introduce a tax cap for the EPIC option, but yeah, we've got to have some change, and let's get some new blood in there to make some solid change.
Thank you. Dan, you'll start this next question. Knowing housing, talent, and childcare are significant challenges in Nebraska, what specific plans do you have to make progress in these areas?
Well, part of the problem right now is the economy. Once our economy improves, we'll do a better job. But we have a shortage of housing. We have a shortage of affordable housing, especially for our elderly. And we need to come up with some ideas that will help us, where we can help when we have that economy improving in the next legislative session, that we also have enough housing. Affordable housing is a unique phrase. Affordable to who? $800 a month for an old person is a lot of money, and when we charge $1,200 a month, they're not able to make it. So the housing, we just need to have more housing for our elderly, and especially in District 33. We need to retain our talent. And I've thought about this on the educational level. When our teachers are in their classrooms, they know, when those kids are juniors and seniors, they know which kids are thinking about becoming teachers. We need to do a better job of retaining those people and getting them back into our community with some incentives on the beginning, not necessarily on the retirement end. And finally, with the child care, I know this firsthand from my children who have their children. They cannot afford the child care and go back into the workforce even when they're making $18 or $20 an hour, and the child care is $400 a week. And so we've got to come back with some sort of tax incentives for those people to go back into our workforce and be able to afford child care.
Thank you. Michelle, housing, talent, and child care plans you have for those areas?
Education is at the heart of economic development. I support all schools. I support our public schools. I support our parochial schools. I support our colleges and universities. If we have an educated population, we're going to have the talent here. So we need to invest in our schools to make sure that our educators are being paid a fair wage, that they're being supported, that our children have the services that they need. That ranges from mental health services in schools. We need to make sure we have other services in schools, like occupational therapy, physical therapy, special education, behavioral health care, while also supporting our core curriculum. The more we can support our students, the more responsible and productive members of society we're going to have as children grow up and become adults. We need to make sure that those kids want to live here too, that we have a community that works hard together, that's not divided. It's time to bring our communities back together like it was from the time I was born here in Hastings. The division is driving people away, and that is not conducive to having a strong economy and a strong workforce. So it's time to bring people back together. As far as childcare goes, we need to support our childcare workers. We need to have those options available for services. I support Senator Fredrickson's bill that was in the legislature this legislative session to really help provide that childcare services to our childcare workers. So we're able to have those options for parents in the workforce. And as far as housing goes, we need to rehabilitate our current housing, we need to attract investors, and we need to have responsible tax reform.
Thank you. Joshua, you're up next. Housing, talent, and childcare plans you have for those areas.
Yeah, so I'm an architectural designer and construction manager, so I deal with the side of housing very often, as well as childcare units. The biggest reason we have such a decrease in affordability is the increase in code. As these codes continue to pile up, prices go up. Average house increases in cost $40,000 just last year. A $300,000 house becomes $340,000 because of these stringent codes, whether it's plumbing, electrical, you name it. Child care facilities are being shut down for minute reasons, whether it's inappropriate staffing, whether it's a hand wash sink. These are things that the state can come alongside and say, how can we keep you open instead of shutting you down? So we've actually just done a project for a child care facility, continue to do that, and the code is stringent, and for good reason, but there's common sense things, then there's tedious things. So we can really cut the red tape to enable the free market to provide the housing and the child care facilities, as opposed to government handouts or subsidies. If you advocate for housing subsidies, you advocate for a tax increase. I'm very much against that. Let's cut the red tape. Let's enable the free market to exercise as it's done in the past very successfully. The other side of this is, why do we have such a need for child care facilities? As inflation is rampant to fund endless wars, for example, Ukraine, we just had another omnibus bill, millions of dollars going to Ukraine. We are funding endless wars. We're not funding our border to be shut down. We're paying a lot of money instead of where we need it. So this is causing people to get second jobs. As a person, if you don't have the budget, what do? You start selling stuff, or you get another job. What does the government do? It takes from you. I think that's very incorrect. That's wrong. It's immoral. The way that we do this is through budget cuts. We just had an example of how no tax reform was pushed in the last session because they couldn't figure out the difference between a tax shift and a tax cut. Let's advocate for a tax cut. Thank you.
Thank you. And Paul, housing, talent, and childcare plans for those.
Thank you. This is the area I think that separates me from my challengers, in that economic development is clearly a focus of what I do, and consistency and integrity of messaging is important. Housing is critically important. To say that affordable housing raises taxes is frankly wrong and absolutely a misunderstanding of that. I'm a consultant and trainer for the National Center for Housing Management and work on these issues nationally, and I'll happily show you the numbers where that is not true. The fact is, the EPIC tax plan will destroy our housing. Putting a tax of 21.6% is the best number we have now on any new construction. And of course, you can't build existing homes. Everything has to be new. It will destroy our housing. Taxing rent will make seniors who live Social Security check to Social Security check, adding 20% to their rent and their health care and everything else they spend. They will have to leave Nebraska. They will force them from their homes. The retaining talent, we're not going to attract talent in young people because we have to retain our young people. But again, those are people who are going to be greatly hurt by the most progressive tax plan, the EPIC one, with a 21.6% tax on everything they spend, including rent and health care. Our rents will be out of control. Our housing market will be destroyed. We'll never be able to attract people here. Childcare, it's hard for people, I have my two colleagues who support the EPIC tax plan. It's hard to me to understand how with integrity they can say they support affordable childcare when they support a tax on childcare costs of, again, more than 20%. Those are the kinds of things that will keep us from attracting the talent that we need, retaining the talent that we have, and keeping things going the way that they should. One last point, remember that a consumption tax, which EPIC proposes, is entirely optional. Nobody has to pay a penny, and they won't. Everybody will shop outside of Nebraska. So I talked to the head of the Landmark Emblem. They would close. So would Menards, so would everybody else, because 70% of the population lives within 40 miles of the border. It simply won't work.
Thank you, Paul. Next question. Michelle, we start with you on this one. Based on the end of this legislative session, what priority pieces would you work to move forward?
My top priorities moving forward include mental health care in general, the safe haven laws, education, and supporting our housing policies. As far as mental health goes, unfortunately, our legislature lost $15 million this year for our behavioral and mental health care. This is a time where my reason for running for state legislature is because within 4 years, I now have a 16-month waiting list. We've had suicides in Hastings Public Schools. We've had suicides with our population. This is not the time we can cut our mental health funding. We have to advocate to make Hastings a leader in mental health services again, like we were when we had Hastings Regional Center here. We also need to work on the safe haven laws because it's a common sense solution to some of the complicated situations. So specifically, that can involve things like expanding our safe haven laws so we can have baby boxes here. Basically what a baby box is a mom, maybe she has an addiction and she can't take care of her child, so she can put the child in a bassinet at the fire station, which allows that baby then to receive care so they're not abandoned in places like dumpsters. Unfortunately, as a therapist, I've worked with some of those abandoned children, and it causes lifelong issues and lifelong costs, some of which can be addressed with a simple solution like expanding our safe haven laws. Also, we need to support education. We have to make sure our teachers, our students are taken care of because education is the heart of our economic development.
Thank you. Joshua, what priority pieces would you work to move forward?
I would love to work with you on the baby boxes, except let's do it all the way at the moment of conception. Life is worth protecting. Our state constitution, Article 1, Section 1, the first right that we have, inherent and inalienable, is the right to life. We've seen with science that unique DNA is created at conception. We see in Scripture that God knows us before the foundations of the planet. It is our responsibility as those with a voice, those with rights, and those not to deprive the rights, to protect the lives of the preborn. So I'd love to expand safe haven, baby box, and any of that. Let's protect children as much as humanly possible. We have a terrible, terrible compromise right now. By all rights, there was one vote that stopped the heartbeat bill. The next step would be a total abortion ban, and I'd like to see that happen. Any exemptions that we allow, the radical left will take and will expand upon. If we allow exemptions for rape and incest, they will fabricate cases of rape and incest and continue to abort those children. It's terrible. It's evil. So I'd like to see that stop. The other side of it, too, is those children, regardless of how you view their conception, are worth protecting. God has made them. They're wonderful. Let's protect them. That's number one priority. Number two, with the property tax, so, Paul, you said 21.6%. If that's the case, that's what we're paying now, except we're spread out into so many other taxes. That's why we desperately need budget cuts. The EPIC option, let's put a tax cap 7.5%. I think that'd be an easy solution. That would not be a terrible disparaging tax. That's 7% sales tax, what we already got. The other side, let's strengthen our elections. The election was stolen. We saw that in 2020. We saw that in 2022 in certain areas. We need to strengthen that. The best way we can do that is to return to hand counting. That was the start of our country. It's worked so far, and now we're seeing a huge in trust. There's no trust in our elections. If we return to hand counting on the county level, we will see people involved and not discouraged to get out and be participants. in this system. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, your priority pieces.
Well, based on the end of the session, the legislature's failure to pass LB 388 was a critical piece. They'll have to come back to a special session to address taxes, which is, of course, the number one issue that we hear about. And we have to address taxes in a way, particularly property taxes, that are going to help the economy and are going to protect our agricultural industry from onerous property taxes. There are some ways to do that, and so my priorities going to the legislature will certainly be things to build the tax base. Economic development expands the tax base. More people paying means the less we all have to pay individually, and so that is an overall solution. We need to grow Nebraska. The second thing we need to do is balance things out. When we look at how our taxes are, our property taxes, because we have a lot of land. We don't have the natural resources that other states have. We don't have the tourism that other states have. We don't have the population that other states have. What do we have? Land. So we have to balance that back. We have to look at how we value ag land. It's a fundamentally different than the commercial properties that you have, for example, in the city. I'm a landlord. I own 6 commercial properties here in the state of Nebraska. When my taxes go up, I pass it on to my tenants. Unfortunately, farmer can't do that. He can't raise the price of corn when his costs go up. And so it's a fundamentally different kind of issue. We need to look at how we value that. We need to make sure we look at the mill rate and incentivize those in municipalities and political subdivisions that control their spending and make sure that we keep that mill rate controlled. We can also, as we did with community colleges, look to move funding from property taxes, take it out of the mill rate, and fund it from other sources from the state. There are also ways that we can, I'm not for local caps. That can be problematic in a one-size-fits-all across the state. But that we can limit the fact that when valuations go up, we shouldn't be necessarily the same increase in taxes.
Thank you. Dan, your priority pieces.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to change how we run for political offices. No one has shown you their resume. That's the reason I have a resume back there. I want you to see what I've done, not what I think I'm going to do, not what I claim I have done. I put it on paper, all that I've done in my in my military life and in my education life. Priority-wise, we've got to take care of our schools, both public and private. Now, the obscenity bill was voted down. Sports and spaces were voted down. Let's talk about that a little bit. Obscenity bill, that's where there was a book with the name of Lucky, and it was told from the angle of the rapist. And the wording in that book was so atrocious, so obnoxious, that it surprised me, A, that it's in schools, 16 different schools, B, that it's up for debate in the legislature. It was, Senator Halloran made a great attempt at trying to get rid of at least this book, but maybe come up with a bill that would get rid of a lot of other books. You want those books with your children? You can have them at home. The second part of that is sports and spaces. If a young man says, hey, I decided I'm going to be a young woman, and he starts taking the medicine that will help him, then he can start going into a girl's locker room at a certain time. Sports and spaces failed. It was very disappointing to me. There's a lot of kids at that age that have gender dysphoria. They don't exactly know what's happening in their body, how it's changing, how things are happening. I really support that we wait till kids are 18 or 19 before that, but we also need to protect our locker rooms for our daughters, for our granddaughters. And finally, tax reform. We need tax reform somewhere. You've got to find tax somewhere else. You can't just make up the money. You can't just take it away. So we've got to learn to do more with less, and we've got to get some sort of tax reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Final question, and we'll kind of rotate around a little bit, but we'll start, Joshua, with you on this one. To conclude our time together, what more would you like the audience to know about you as a candidate for District 33 legislature?
In each one of us, what the job includes, and really the only thing, is to uphold the Constitution, the state and the federal Constitution, the state being the priority, the federal being second to that, and then listening to the voice of your constituents. That is a test. Test each of our words, test each of our histories, test what we say to you as how we will vote. That's all you can do. This is a trust effort. This is our ability to develop trust with the constituents that this is what the Constitution says, this is how we will vote, and this is our beliefs. That's really all we can do. I am the most pro-life candidate by far. I will absolutely fight to end abortion in Nebraska. This is the greatest evil that we have, and I will say that until it's done, and then we'll work on getting adoption rocking and rolling for all those babies that are going to be popping out, and that's going to be great. It's awesome. I got 3 babies at home. I love my children. We have to protect our children. The school systems have been indoctrinated with radical liberal ideology. There's pride flags, there's transgenderism, there's these nasty books that Dan and Senator Howard have addressed. That needs to end. This transgenderism that's being pushed by therapists, liberal ideology, it has to end. The social media indoctrination is poisoning the minds of our children. This is the last frontier of assault, and it needs to stop. So I'm 27. I look forward to protecting my children, and I look forward to protecting yours. The other side, we didn't touch on it, but I'd like to get castle doctrine. I'd like to get stand your ground laws in Nebraska. Right now we have a very loose duty to retreat. So the perpetrator has all rights that if they do something evil against you, you have to run if you're not in your home or your place of business. This is wrong. We need to actually affirm the constitutional right to bear arms that was just passed a couple sessions ago, which is great. No more concealed carry permit. I'd like to see you're protected in the event that you have to use it as a responsible firearm owner. So I'm the most in tune with the Constitution. I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Michelle, we'll have you next. What more would you like us to know about you as candidate for District 33 legislature?
A house divided against itself cannot stand. Those are the words of Abraham Lincoln and also the words of Scripture. And that was true back in the time of the Civil War and is true today. Our society will collapse if we remain divided and focus on these divisive issues that some of my cohort here today have even brought up and mentioned. We need to come back together to bring the common sense solutions for all of these complex issues in our society. My great-great-grandfather served in the Union Army to bring us back together. He's buried here in Hastings. He raised his family here. That's one of the reasons I'm here in Hastings. I was born and raised here in this community, which means I truly care about Hastings and District 33. My one set of grandparents had a farm in Lawrence, Nebraska, nearby, not in the district. Another set of grandparents had a farm in Shelton, Nebraska. So I understand the values of common sense, decency, and respect that I will bring to the state legislature, being your common sense local voice representing the people of District 33.
Thank you. Dan, you're next. What more would you like the audience to know about you?
I don't have any fancy presidential phrases. If I did, it would be Thomas Jefferson. That guy's pretty neat. We haven't talked about clean energy, and that's a topic that I'm very sensitive about carbon sequestration and some of those issues. I've been a civil servant for the last 40 years. I've helped kids join the military, and I've helped kids. My doctor is also my former student. The U.S. Army sniper that's a Blue Hill teacher is my son. The welder that just fixed the windmill in my yard is a current student. There's a lot of great things happening in schools, and we need to make sure that we know about that too. I'm an action officer in the military, or that's how I retired. Let me tell you what I mean by that. In the last week, I've talked to a girl almost every day about quitting vaping. I've been texting her and calling her. I've set another girl up with a U.S. Air Force recruiting officer trying to help her join the U.S. Air Force. Even though I kid her that I'm an Army guy and that the Air Force is the next one down, I'm trying to help her get into the Air Force. I'm going to Silver Lake as soon as this is over, and I'm taking a rehabilitated drug addict with me. And she's going to tell them how she got hooked on prescription drugs and how she got herself off and is now a nurse. I'm an action officer. For the last 40 years, I've helped kids, I've helped people in the military, I've done what I can. I don't work for you. Excuse me, I've done that twice. You don't work for me. I work for you. I will keep an open line of communication. I will try to help people, and I will try to be the best representative for District 33 that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And Paul, what more would you like the audience to know about you as a candidate?
I have a track record that's verifiable. Talk to folks in this community who will tell you not only what I have done, what I'm doing, and what I'll continue to do in the legislature. This building is a perfect example. We sit in an airport that 8 years ago on a rainy day like this, I was a candidate running again for city council. We had the only airport in America that was run by the town dump. It was problematic. Today, you'll see a sign here in this airport. We are Airport of the Year in Nebraska. And that's a huge economic development win. The project across the street, we were a big part of that in the city council in finding a developer and giving them incentives to come in. And what was a blight and a drain on our economy now is generating revenue for the city of Hastings, a great investment. These are the reasons why I was one of 8 candidates across the state of Nebraska, the only one in District 33, to be endorsed by Farm Bureau this past week, the largest agricultural organization in the state of Nebraska. It's why community leaders came and asked me to run. They know they can count on me to make sure that I will keep your taxes low, rein in government spending. Happy to give you examples of how we did that here in Hastings and save taxpayer and ratepayer money with Hastings utilities and keeping those things low. Making sure that we guard our Nebraska values and attracting and keeping our talent. And so we've got to build the economy. We've got to grow Nebraska. We have to keep Nebraska a place that is truly the good life for everyone. Having worked with seniors for so many years, I can appreciate the difficulty of living on a fixed income, paycheck, Social Security check to Social Security check, and making sure that they have the good life as well. For young people who are trying to get established, just beginning their careers, we need to make it easy for them to come and find the good life here in Nebraska.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks to all of you for this morning, and I'll throw it back to Mickey.
All right, thank you, candidates, for your time today. We'd like to remind everyone that we do have our next Coffee with the Candidates, which will be next Friday, May 3rd, and that will be with the Adams County Supervisors, District 2. And then the following week, we will have our final Coffee with the Candidates, which will be with our Adams County Supervisors, Districts 4 and 6. So everyone, please remember to come back for those as well. We would like to thank the Hastings Municipal Airport for this venue, and then also Troy Davis for our coffee that is provided for all of our events. And then also thank you, Chris, as well. This event is being recorded by Hastings Public Access Channel, so if you know of anyone who is not able to participate today, if you could direct them to that station, they would be able to view that. And then also we have that listed on the Chamber's website as well, underneath our Media Hub, which has all of the information of candidates from the beginning. And then also now we just encourage everyone that if you're able to still stay, and this will be your time to talk with the candidates as well, and we thank you all for coming.